Hello everybody, it's January 2021. Seems such a long time since we've all met together as a church family, and how I've missed not getting together and celebrating special times together. Christmas and New Year in particular, they're a time when people may feel nostalgic and often look back with fondness of the good times that they've had in the past, but also with the new year of great anticipation of things to come. Christmas is full of traditions. Watching that favourite film on Christmas Eve, getting out the Christmas jumper, the giving and receiving of gifts, and enjoying certain food and drinks. The list is endless. We may have found that this year, most of those feelings may have been a bit different and fraught with frustration or disappointment as plans changed every few days with government guidance. Perhaps this year, more than before, we've had the opportunity to think about things much more as we've spent more time alone and isolated from others. I really enjoy my food, and an important part of the festive season for me is revisiting those old recipes used by previous generations and also trying new things and sharing meals with others. This Christmas, chocolate brownies gave me something to think about. Let me explain. When our children were growing up, most school holidays during their primary years, I'd get together with a friend of mine and her children, and we would have what we called an art attack day. These days comprised of us both organising different craft activities for the 5 children, plus giving them the opportunity to make lunch and cakes. It was an incredibly messy time, but great fun. This Christmas, I was privileged to be invited by that same friend's daughter to a crafternoon, raising money for Mind, via Zoom of course. It was history repeating itself. There was a group of about 30 online participants. Sent templates to us, recipes and some resources, and we all worked remotely making Christmas items. One such thing was the Christmas tree brownie, which is a festive twist on a regular recipe, which I've used again during the season. It was a great occasion, and over £750 was raised for a very worthwhile charity. She even received a Radio 2 Sarah Cox Award for her achievement. One of my neighbours also called round with a gift of homemade brownies for us. He's a real community hero. He's aged in his mid-80s and he's done so much for our local community over many years, and someone I'm really grateful to have crossed paths with. We loved his brownies, but sadly our Labrador did too, and as some of you may know, chocolate can be really dangerous for dogs, so it caused quite a bit of concern. But thankfully, brownies are now an addition to the list of potentially harmful items that have been consumed by him, to which he has managed to survive. So why am I talking to you about brownies and my brownie experiences this year? These Christmas brownie experiences reminded me of an encouraging collection of thoughts by Ellie Hart that I'd read. She uses everyday stories and images to deliver the message of hope for a world that certainly needs it more than ever. One such reflection involved chocolate brownies. Did you know that when brownies first became popular in the UK, they weren't fully appreciated? They caused confusion and disappointment. People were concerned that they just hadn't cooked properly and they didn't turn out as expected. It was felt that the recipe must have been incorrect, as the middle didn't appear to be cooked. Perhaps it was written down wrong. I remember a time when someone used my mother-in-law's chocolate square recipe and added 2 pounds of sugar rather than 2 ounces. A hammer was needed to break them up. Could the same misinterpretation of a recipe have happened with the chocolate brownie? Well, it took us in the UK some time to appreciate that a squidgy middle in a cake can actually be a very good thing. Life can be a bit like the chocolate brownie. It just doesn't turn out as we would have expected. 2020 is a prime example of this. I don't think any of us would have imagined a year quite like the one we've just experienced. The front page of our local magazine reads, Goodbye 2020, the year we all want to forget. I'm sure you'll all agree with this. So why is life not as we expected? There are so many possible reasons. Maybe we get things wrong, or we've been hurt by others. Sometimes it's simply because we live in a broken world where the unexpected still happens. However, occasionally it's because, like the brownies, they were never supposed to be the way that we imagined. When we are young, we all have expectations of what life will be like, but as time progresses, most of us find a few surprises along the way as we have to face numerous challenges. Particularly for the younger generation, this can be hard as social media is constantly portraying a perfect, fulfilled life. However, there are far more ordinary days than those when everything is fun and exciting. We need to remember that God is good and will be with us whatever our situation. He will accompany us through the good and the challenging times. Many are familiar with the Footprints poem, which illustrates this so well. And if you haven't read this before, I'd encourage you to do so. It's such a powerful illustration of God's care during the struggles of life. In my recent times, I've been looking at the life of Sarah. This has been so enlightening, as the Bible refers to her as the mother of nations. This woman had quite a tumultuous life. She felt shame and worthless, not being able to conceive in a culture which saw this as evidence of God's displeasure. She was abused, manipulated, overlooked. But she also had her own failings, as she was cruel and she mistreated Hagar. But God promised Sarah that she would have a son. I don't think her life had been quite what she'd expected at that point, and when told that she would have a child, she laughed. It was a snigger of unbelief, not of joy. However, at the age of 90, Sarah gave birth to a son, Isaac. The account of this is in Genesis chapter 21. As joy comes to Sarah, the Bible is careful to point repeatedly to the faithfulness of God as the cause of her joy. 3 times in 2 verses it is made clear God keeps his promises. He is utterly trustworthy. That doesn't mean that we're assured of getting anything we want, but when God promises something, he always is faithful. But God helped Sarah, and her faith is celebrated and honoured by him in the account in Hebrews 11. Maybe we're a bit like Sarah. Our faith is being tested right now. How can we manage more weeks of restrictions and social isolation? Maybe you feel ashamed because trusting God just seems a bit like a struggle. Sarah certainly had a life where she faced some unbearable situations, and some of her responses were moments of life she may not have been proud of. I guess that is fundamentally human and something we can all relate to. Mostly we don't get a lot of choice over what we face in life, but we can choose how we face unexpected challenges and adjust our attitude to them. Just as Sarah's life is unlikely to be anything like she hoped for or imagined, she experienced how God kept his promise. The same God continues to keep his promises today. To conclude, I'd like to share some verses from the Book of Lamentations. This book is generally very bleak, written by Jeremiah as he watches the intense suffering of God's people with the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. However, amongst these verses is a promise of newness, that God's steadfast love is renewed to us on a daily basis. The well-known hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness, is based upon these words. Lamentations 3:21 to 25 in the 21st century King James Version reads, This I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. It is through the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, saith my soul, therefore will I hope in him. The Lord is good unto them who wait for him, to the soul that seeketh him. Like in Lamentations, we are currently living through bleak times, and our lives may not be turning out quite as we'd hoped. Perhaps today we can acknowledge that, like brownies, things might not be what we expect, nor what we asked for or hoped for. But hopefully we can pull together the courage to take a breath, reach God's hand and enjoy what is before us. I hope that in some unexpected way you may realise that your experience is good. Just read or listen to the words of this famous hymn and know that God's promises are true and his steadfast love is new every morning. Thank you.
Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see.
Great is thy faithfulness.
Great